I now give the floor to Ms. Akyaa Pobee.
Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, thank you for convening today's meeting on the situation in the Sudan, a situation which continues to dangerously deteriorate. The persistent engagement of the Security Council is crucial. The warring parties do take note when we act collectively, and we must do more. Despite efforts by the United Nations, its member states, and the regional organizations, we have not succeeded in preventing the escalation of violence in the country, and notably in Fasher. We are deeply worried that the fighting in and around Fasher could lead to more mass suffering by the civilian population. There are atrocities along ethnic lines, and we witness the severe consequences of relentless shelling and aerial bombardments in densely populated areas. From 16th April to 9th June, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights documented at least 192 civilian deaths in Fasher. Since then, dozens more civilians, including women and children, have reportedly been killed. Civilians are in the line of fire. Nowhere is safe for them. We strongly condemn the attack on the South Hospital in Fasher, carried out reportedly by the Rapid Support Forces on 8th June, depriving hundreds of thousands of civilians trapped in the city of one of their last remaining lifelines. Mr. President, a ceasefire in Fasher is needed now to prevent further atrocities, protect critical infrastructure, and alleviate civilian suffering. It could and should also pave the way for a broader scale cessation of hostilities. The adoption of Resolution 2736 last week is an important signal from this Council that the escalation of the military confrontation must stop and put an end to its deep negative impact on the lives of the people of Sudan. The resolution underlines the well-established responsibility of the warring parties and reiterates the pressing need for them to abide by international humanitarian law. The parties are called to immediately de-escalate the situation in Fasher and protect civilians throughout the Sudan territory. The parties must heed this call without delay. As requested by the Security Council, the Secretary General will actively develop recommendations to more effectively strengthen the protection of civilians. Mr. President, as the Security Council meets to closely follow the developments on the ground, the fighting between the warring parties continues to rage and is in fact escalating in several other parts of Sudan, including Greater Khartoum, the Kordofan regions, and Gezira State. On 5th June, a horrific attack carried out in the village of Wad al-Nura, Gezira State, allegedly by the Rapid Support Forces, reportedly killed over 100 civilians. Violence against civilians must stop now. No operational justification and even miscalculation would give reason for aiming at civilians under any circumstances. Without swift action, Sudan risks becoming engulfed in more ethnic violence and fragment even further. The risk of a conflict spillover remains high. As the flow of sophisticated weapons continues to fuel the war, all concerned external players should act responsibly and use their leverage over the warring parties to advance peace efforts. Their positive engagement could make a difference to the trajectory of this war and on the magnitude of its human toll. Mr. President, the human rights situation remains appalling. Serious violations of international humanitarian law and human rights law continue to be committed at a large scale. This includes summary executions of civilians and arrest and detention incommunicado of hundreds of individuals in poor conditions, as well as widespread conflict-related sexual violence, predominantly perpetrated by the Rapid Support Forces. We urgently need meaningful actions towards ensuring accountability for these violations. The victims deserve justice. Mr. President, so far, mediation efforts have not secured a ceasefire nor a sustained direct dialogue between the parties. Regrettably, there is no indication that the important discussions held in the context of the Jeddah platform will resume soon. We call on the parties to embrace dialogue, desist from destructive blame games, and seek every opportunity for peace. Mr. President, we cannot afford to be passive bystanders. A negotiated solution remains the only way out of this conflict. The personal envoy of the Secretary General, Mr. Ramtan Lamamra, visited the region in May and early June. He held discussions with General Burhan and other senior commanders of the Sudanese Armed Forces and members of the Sudan Sovereign Council in Port Sudan, as well as with the senior delegation sent to Nairobi by the commander of the Rapid Support Forces, General Dagalo. He urged them to spare civilians during all military operations, whether via land or from the air. He urged them to agree on a local ceasefire in El Fasher, highlighting it is essential to ensure the safety of civilians. He also conveyed the need for an action-oriented meeting of the Humanitarian Forum, chaired by the UN Humanitarian Coordinator, Ms. Clementine Inqueta Salami, to concretely discuss and eliminate impediments to humanitarian access. Meeting with them, the personal envoy registered the commitment of both the Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces to the Jeddah Declaration of Commitment to Protect Civilians, signed on 11th May 2023. Some fundamental differences between the parties still exist on how to advance the implementation of these commitments. We call on them to display a constructive attitude in charting a way forward. Mr. President, Mr. Lamamra continues to work on advancing a coordinated mediation endeavor, working alongside member states and regional partners, including the African Union, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, and the League of Arab States to advance peace efforts. We welcome the Cairo communique resulting from the consultative meeting convened by the League of Arab States on 12 June. The commitment to form a technical working group of the regional and international organizations is an important step. It will facilitate the exchange of views and coordination of diplomatic initiatives. We also extend our gratitude to Djibouti for offering to host next month a retreat for international mediators to be jointly co-sponsored by the concerned multilateral organizations. This retreat will be crucial to revitalize coherent and coordinated peace efforts. It provides the opportunity to agree on shared responsibilities and a unified approach to peace in Sudan. We are also encouraged by the decision of the leadership of the African Union to launch a preparatory process for the convening of a Sudanese civilian political dialogue. The United Nations stands ready to facilitate the provision of a United Nations appropriate contribution. It is critical that civilian voices, especially those of women and youth, are heard. Upholding the promise of the transitional period for a fully credible democratic government remains crucial. We look forward to continuing our work with the African Union High-Level Panel in leading these important efforts with the support and contribution of the other concerned multilateral organizations. Mr. President, it is high time for the warring parties to spare the Sudanese people from further suffering and come to the negotiating table to discuss in good faith. We encourage the parties to fully take advantage of the good offices of Personal Envoy Lamamra to promote constructive interactions which could help them take steps towards a horizon of peace. The plight of the Sudanese people demands our urgent attention and decisive action. The warring parties have the responsibilities to fulfill the aspirations of the people of Sudan and make decisions of historic nature and scope. The people of Sudan deserve no less. Thank you for your kind attention.
I thank Ms. Pobee for her briefing. I now give the floor to Ms. Adam Wasornu,